Twitter poll, over 5,400 votes in for Sweet Saudi Money. And what a glowing score this show got. 7% thumbs up. 55% thumbs down. 38% did not watch. I, for one, cannot wait for Sweet Saudi Money 6. Turning tricks for the Saudi Prince. If you did not watch the pay-per-view, you missed nothing outside of 2 title changes, including one that if you blinked, you would have missed it. The Miz and John Morrison, they are the new SmackDown Tag Team Champions. Probably the best thing on the entire show, beating the New Day. And Goldberg, who said that he only had 3 weeks' notice to prepare for the match, became the first man to beat the Fiend. And in so doing, he is now the new Universal Champion. And as it has been pointed out on social media, we now have the same champions on Raw and SmackDown that we had at the end of Survivor Series in 2003. I don't know whether to laugh or cry. Goldberg, right out of his garage, did what Finn Balor, the Monday Night Messiah, and Daniel Bryan could not do. And that is beat the Fiend. And beat the Fiend decisively. It did not take him 10 minutes to beat the Fiend. He barely broke a sweat. I mean, he was sweating. I mean, he's 53 years old. But didn't take a whole lot of effort for him to put down the Fiend in a matter of minutes. He beat him in 2 minutes. 2 minutes after 4 spears and a suplex. That was not a jackhammer. He may have been trying for a jackhammer, but that was no jackhammer. He beat the Fiend with a suplex. The same Fiend who no-sold everyone else's offense. One suplex pins the Fiend. In fact, it was a great night. Not only for Bill Goldberg, it was a great night for The Undertaker, and it was a great night for Brock Lesnar. All 3 wrestling for a combined total of under 6 minutes on this show. Undertaker's entrance lasted longer than his match and Brock Lesnar's match combined. And if you think I'm exaggerating, I'm not. He pinned AJ Styles with a chokeslam in 20 seconds to win the Tuake Trophy. Brock Lesnar, you knew he was going to dominate. You knew the match would be short. That was to be expected, and it wasn't the incorrect outcome. But they did not even give Ricochet one lick of offense in that match. 3 German suplexes and 1 F5 later, and any value that Ricochet may have had left, poof, gone with the wind. They buried his chances of ever being taken seriously ever again as any kind of threat. And you know I don't use that word very often because I do think that's an overused word. A lot of people don't know what it means. I don't throw that word buried or bury around very often. They buried his chances of ever being taken, of me anyway, ever taking him seriously ever again. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when whoever it was, whether it was Paul Heyman or Vince McMahon or Paul Levesque or whoever it was, when they came into the room to tell Ricochet what the plans were for his big match that I'm sure he was looking forward to. I'm sure when he won that triple threat match on Raw all those weeks ago and realized, hey, I'm going to get a big championship match with Brock Lesnar. I mean, he had to know he wasn't going to win, but he probably was looking at that and going, hey, this is a big opportunity for me. This is maybe the biggest match of my career. I get to go in there and work with Brock Lesnar. I get to go in there and show people what I can do. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when they walked in and told him what the plan was for this match. So, hey, buddy, come over here. So here's how it's going to go. Brock's going to throw you around, and then he's going to pin you. And then you can hit the showers. Oh, my goodness. And looking at these 3 wins that I just mentioned made me think of another trio of wins from Fully Loaded 2000, which was one of the best shows that entire year, was that Fully Loaded show. You had Undertaker working with Kurt Angle, who was still a new guy on the rise. You had Triple H working with Chris Jericho, who was also a young guy, on the rise at the time, right? He had come over from WCW the year before, was very popular, but he was still the new kid on the block in WWE. And you had The Rock. The Rock defending the WWE Championship against Chris Benoit, who was still relatively new to the company. He'd only been there about 6 months up to that point. And all of the veteran WWE guys that night beat the new guys. Undertaker pinned Kurt Angle. Triple H beat Jericho in that classic last man standing match. And The Rock retained the championship over Benoit. They did a false finish at first where The Rock lost the belt because he could lose it by DQ. But then the match got restarted. You could look at that 20 years ago. Exactly 20 years ago this year. You could look at that and say, my God, some things never change. Only the faces change. But the more things change, the more they stay the same. Look at the veteran guys crushing the new guys. But Triple H gave Jericho the best match of his career up to that point. Only by the skin of his teeth did Triple H make it back up to his feet before the count of 10 and win that match. And Benoit hung in there with The Rock, and he was never really made to look less than. And we all know Benoit could have wrestled circles around The Rock. But Rock was one of the biggest stars even then in all of wrestling, and he made Benoit look like his equal. If you were a top guy back then, no matter what Vince McMahon told you to go out there and do, or Pat Patterson told you to go out there and do, if you were a Rock or a Steve Austin or an Undertaker, you were going to go out there and do whatever the hell you wanted to do. And if you didn't want to do business with somebody or put them over strongly because you didn't like them, or you thought that they're not one of us or they're disrespectful to the business in some way, but those guys would take matters into their own hands, and they wouldn't work with you. They could make you look like shit if they wanted to. But they didn't do that. They worked with the new guys, the young guys, and even though they all lost, they still came out of that pay-per-view stronger for it, even though they all lost. And maybe not everybody would agree with that assessment, but they gave them something to make you want to see them again, something to build their career for the future. Fast forward 20 years, and here they gave these guys nothing. They don't come out of this show stronger. Just the opposite, in fact. They come out looking weaker. Now, AJ Styles is going to be fine. He's a made man. AJ Styles is going to be just fine. Ricochet is done. Ricochet is finished. And the Fiend is not finished. The Fiend may end up being okay, but the Fiend lost a piece of his mystique that he could never get back. A piece of his mystique that should have been held on to until at least WrestleMania. And so we now have here a situation where Vince McMahon sees that, hey, we're 5 weeks out from WrestleMania, and we need attractions to sell the show. And if they end up moving some of these pay-per-views to ESPN Plus in a few months, people have to pay full price for them again possibly, then how do you get people to buy the shows? You need attractions. Well, you do things like this at your own peril. Because at some point in the not-too-distant future, you're not going to have these attractions anymore. 53-year-old Goldberg is going to be 63. 75-year-old Undertaker is going to be 95. Triple H, he's winding down. He doesn't even have a match scheduled for WrestleMania this year. When those guys are not available anymore, then what? I get that they're available now. That's why they feel the need to use them. But where do you find that next big attraction? There is a place for these guys, but not at the expense of your talent roster. That well with the legends is going to run dry at some point. And in the meantime, people wonder, how come they can't make new stars like they used to? I mean, Braun Strowman and Daniel Bryan and the Roman Reigns, yes, they're stars, but it just doesn't feel like they're stars on the level that guys used to be stars. How come they can't do that anymore? Because they don't want to. They either forgot or they don't want to. And by the way, I do think there is something, and we've talked about this before, where, John Cena may well have been the last true kind of breakout star coming from WWE. And what I mean by that is, I don't think this company wants any one person to be bigger than the company the way that Rock became that, larger-than-life star. John Cena, now he's branching out into Hollywood. And there have been others, Hogan, people who transcended WWE. The whole thing where back in the day you put their name on the marquee and they could sell tickets, and now you don't do that now. You just say WWE is coming to town, and that either sells tickets or it doesn't. It's actually selling less tickets than ever before. But I don't know that they want that necessarily. I don't know that they want to have a star as big as some of those guys were. The fact of the matter is that they live in the here and now. It's all about short-term pleasure and pleasing stockholders and trying to get the immediate numbers up. That's what they live and die by. So what's going to happen is maybe you'll get some of those lapsed fans back for WrestleMania. Maybe. Who do you think they're appealing to with guys like Goldberg and The Undertaker? They're trying to bring in some of these lapsed fans who aren't watching the product anymore. So yeah, maybe you'll get some of them back. But when WrestleMania is over, you're giving these people absolutely no reason to stick around. Because they're going to see a talent roster that does not appeal to them, because why the hell would it? So they'll disappear again off into the wilderness until next year's WrestleMania. They don't care about the idiots like you and me that watch week to week. They focus their efforts on trying to get back the people who left them years ago. We're like the nice guy boyfriend who's trying to give the girl everything she wants, but she doesn't give a fuck about us. All she's interested in is getting back together with her ex, who dumped her. And maybe she'll get him back for one night. But he won't even be there when she opens her eyes the next morning. And I think it's going to be real bad news for them if they don't start doing a better job of protecting the talent that they have right now. SmackDown Friday night, you got Goldberg walking out with his shiny new title, and the Boo Birds were out in Boston. They did not like William Goldberg in Beantown. They weren't much happier when Roman Reigns walked out either, but at least it was more of a mixed reaction, a little bit more, positive when he came out. Some fans started a "You both suck" chant. I think it was only a few people, but it got picked up on TV. But Goldberg said, "Who's next?" And out walked Roman Reigns, who said, "I am. I'm next." And the match is now official. It will be the Battle of the Spears at WrestleMania. Goldberg, who supposedly 3 weeks ago was not even penciled in on the WrestleMania card, and 2 weeks ago wasn't even scheduled to beat the Fiend, is now in the main event of WrestleMania defending the Universal Championship. It's nice to see them planning ahead for their biggest show of the year. I'm not even saying there's no appeal in doing a Roman Reigns-Bill Goldberg match. But this did not need to be for the title. But they want that Roman Reigns WrestleMania coronation. They took it away from him at WrestleMania 31. He got it at WrestleMania 32. They didn't give it to him at WrestleMania 34. But they're going to give it to him at 36. They have kept him away from the title picture for a year. Vince McMahon can wait no longer. But this did not need to be for the championship. My bigger issue is that you can do the match without having to make the Fiend look so weak. And I know people are going to say, "You're making a big deal about this. He came out on stage the next night. Listen to the crowd. People have already forgotten what happened." You don't just forget about something like that. Don't forget about your first loss. I love how people can just disregard it. If none of this stuff means anything, then what's the point of any of this? What is the point of any of this if your argument is that nothing means anything? They can do anything they want to. Nothing matters. Oh, great. Nice. That's good to know. This did not need to be for the championship, but it's the way that they did the Fiend dirty on that show, the way that he lost. That's really what irritated me more than anything else. And yes, it is kind of goofy that Roman can walk out and just say, "I'm fighting for the title." And at the same time, everybody else needs to qualify for a title match. Drew McIntyre had to win the Royal Rumble. Charlotte Flair had to win the Royal Rumble. Shayna Baszler's got to win the Elimination Chamber, even though she bit a chunk out of Becky's neck. She's got to go into the Elimination Chamber match. And Roman walks out and grabs a microphone. They canceled an entire Elimination Chamber match because it was so predictable that he was going to win anyway. And so they just canceled the whole match. I mean, at least this spares us having to see Roman Reigns and Baron Corbin in the same ring again, because you know they would have been in the chamber match. You know for a fact they would have been back at it again in that Elimination Chamber match. So at least this spares us from having to see the two of them in the ring together again. But poor Sheamus. Maybe when he talked about entering the chamber match last week, Maybe he was referring to the women's chamber. I mean, I guess if you can't win the Intercontinental title to become the ultimate Grand Slam champion that he said he wants to be, I guess the women's title will have to suffice. Now, before Super Showdown, Roman was interviewed. He was asked, who would you prefer to face at WrestleMania, Goldberg or The Fiend? And he said The Fiend. He said, no offense to Goldberg, but The Fiend's busted his ass all year to get to this point. He was talking about it as if it was like a real out-of-character interview, even though it was clear to me that this was all part of the work. It was being done to tie in with what the storyline is likely going to be for this match at WrestleMania. They had to know that Goldberg was going to be booed when they got back on American soil and he walked out on television the next night. They had to know there was at least a very good chance that the reaction would be negative when he walked out. And what they're doing here is they're running the same storyline that they did with Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar 2 years ago, heading into WrestleMania 34, which did kind of work. To a point, it did kind of work to rally the fans around Roman Reigns, that he's full-time, and Brock Lesnar is a part-time piece of trash. What did he say? Hiding behind his contract. Remember that? They had Lesnar advertised to appear at a Monday Night Raw show, and then they intentionally kept him off the show to sell the fact that he, quote, no-showed, so they could send out Roman Reigns to cut a work shoot promo about Brock and saying, the people in the back, I may get in trouble for saying this, but... And then he went into work shoot mode. He said, Brock Lesnar's not here tonight. He no-showed. He doesn't respect me. He doesn't respect any of you. He doesn't respect any of the boys in the back. He's too busy snapping selfies at the UFC show in Vegas with Dana White. I'm full-time. I travel everywhere. I bust my ass for this company. And it did work for at least a few weeks. I don't remember it working at WrestleMania. I think he still got booed there. But it looks like, and it's still early, we'll see, but it looks like we're fixing for a similar storyline possibly here with Bill Goldberg. Not that he's going to no-show and go full heel. But even Corey Graves at Super Showdown after Goldberg won, he was making comments on commentary about how now you've got to be full-time. We can't have a part-time champion. You've got to be full-time. So we're back to the same story to make sure that the fans are solidly behind Roman Reigns. And what's funny is that it kind of worked the last time, and he lost anyway. After all of that, they get to WrestleMania, they do Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns, and I assume because Vince McMahon probably said, well, everybody assumes Roman's going to win, so to swerve us, they had Brock beat him clean, right in the middle of the ring. Now, he was booed horrifically when he got to Mania. I was in the building that night. People did not like Roman Reigns, and they didn't like Brock Lesnar. So actually what it achieved was, instead of having at least one guy in the match that people liked, which would have been Brock, yeah, they got us to hate Brock, but we also hated Roman. I say we. I mean the collective people in the building that night. So what you ended up with was a match where the crowd just completely shit on both guys, which might explain why when Brock Lesnar got backstage, unless you think it's all a work, if you remember from that 24 special they did, the first thing Brock Lesnar did when he got to the back, he took that Universal title and he threw it across the ring. I think he threw it at Vince McMahon. He chucked the belt at Vince and he stormed off to the back. He was not in a good mood. And look, I don't blame him. You get that kind of reaction out there, the people just completely shit on your WrestleMania main event. He probably had flashbacks to the match with Goldberg at WrestleMania 20. I'm sure Brock really wasn't in a very good mood that night. But after all of that, they beat Roman anyway. They took 6 F5s to do it, but they beat him clean. I couldn't believe that.